So recently, this GameStop fiasco has really been this hot topic between my friends as well as my colleagues at Empirics. We currently have a few authors writing on it. And it's really been this very hotly followed headline in the media, especially on the vertical ascension of this publicly listed company, which by the way seems to be failing, yet in the 3 months period it's actually risen by 7,500%, and how these everyday Joe investors, these people who have none of the typical backgrounds of these financiers, not so much educated in finance or in any sense really understanding what's going on, but yet somehow many of them have become millionaires overnight just by really getting involved in this. I certainly had a lot of friends who've been asking me about it, a lot of friends who went into investments because of it, and a lot of people asking my positions in terms of my own investment decisions on it. But today I really want to get into it because I think aside from focusing on this like rag to riches story, there's actually something much bigger that's happening with this GameStop situation. And what we have to realize is that it's a very defining moment in terms of how our financial markets evolve because of technology. And that's a bigger part of the narrative that not too many people are really focused on. You see, this entire GameStop situation has really been the cause of several developments in our society that more or less have been years in the making. You see, the first thing is you have the rise of financial accessibility in terms of participation in the financial markets. In the past, when you think about investments, it was always this sort of ivory tower, exclusive arena that was more or less limited and restricted to, these financiers who are very well educated in finance, who are very technically minded. They're aware of how to do fundamental analysis, technical analysis. These hedge funds, these firms on Wall Street. And it was more or less the arena. All the big shots, all the developments of price movements were mainly caused by these people. But now with the rise of trading platforms, as well as the ease of digital trading investments, even offered through banks, for example, anyone can now participate. And that's really brought with it this new mobilization of capital of an entire new class of people. This giant injection of this capital power from a totally different source. No longer just the institutions, but a collective of these everyday investors joined together, these retail investors as they call it. And that's actually a very exciting thing. If we look at the charts of developments of retail investors and their growth in the past few years, it really has been a meteoric rise. And now we have this new class of investors. But the second very interesting thing is that these investors, they're really able to mobilize because of the rise of social media and also social network technologies. So we're talking about obviously Facebook, but also other places like forums, Reddits, where now these collective of what were one or two random investors can now join together and actually mobilize their capital together in a collective way and truly impact financial markets in a way that's never been possible before. Now, we're thinking about this 10 or 20 years ago, it would not have been possible. The technologies, developments were not there, but now this is very much a reality. And what's so interesting is that these new investors, this new class of investors, they are totally different from traditional institutional investors, traditional financiers. They don't operate in the same way, the same sort of rationale. Whereas with most institutional investors trying to rationally speculate and invest in the market through fundamental and technical analysis, these new class investors, they might invest for totally different reasons. They might inject capital into a stock purely because of a social cause, purely because of a belief, which is what more or less has happened with the GameStop situation, where they were trying to fight back in a contrarian way against the establishment. And what this means is now you have this powerful class of people, this mobilized capital, that can behave in a totally invalidating way to the current establishment. What sort of impact might that cause in the market? And that's exactly what we've seen here. They have totally destroyed the establishment, at least many of them, in the past 3 months, where many of these giant hedge funds, such as Melvin Capital and others, they need billions in bailout just because they've been hemorrhaging 1.6 billion a day just from the very act of these everyday Joe investors combined together. And this is really exciting time that we're living in, because in the whole history of financial markets around the world, this has never been possible. It truly is the power of the crowd applied to the context of the financial markets. Now, of course, it is very chaotic, and it's really hard to imagine what sort of future plays that might actually occur from this, what sort of regulatory development might actually, evolve in a counteract to this situation. But what we can see so far is that there is this rise of this new class, and more people are getting involved in the financial markets. So perhaps for many of the institutional investors, the conventional investors, now in terms of analyzing for the parameters of your investment strategy, now they have to consider so much more than before. And that really is a very exciting thing that many financiers didn't think was possible. Wall Street, institutional investors were all blindsided by this. And I think it really is very exciting times that we are living in, and certainly something that I don't think anyone could have predicted at the time until we've seen it recently. But then again, that's really been part of our societal development, how technology has impacted every aspect of our economy in ways that we can never imagine. So it really is very exciting times that we live in. And we will have a few more articles about this coming out in the span of a few days, but certainly, this really is a very exciting thing to watch, and yeah, we'll see where it goes.